Oh, let's see if second attempt goes well. All right, I'm absolutely knackered, and I wanted to make this video, and I'm gonna try my best to try and explain this. I feel like I've said this throughout across all my videos, but anyway, I wanted to talk about the saying of finishing what you started, and yeah, I'll start with the story. Just kind of take it from there, really. So for the last couple of months, I've been following a book, and it's a technical book. My background is in the tech sector. That's what I do currently in my career. The intention of reading that book was to learn more about an area I haven't got exposure to before, or it'll be nice to learn something different and expand my horizons. And the idea was to, and in that book, it's quite a hands-on book. It gives you like a step-by-step implementing it from like nothing to basically having a full project towards the very end. By the time you start reading the book, you have a full working project. And I was definitely up for the challenge. And when the code, so when I say I'm done with the project, I mean like a programming project. What they programmed in, for anyone who's in the tech sector, they were using Go. And what I was going to be programming, and what I've been programming when I was following through the book, was in a completely different language called C#. Now, for anyone who's not in the tech sector, you trying to translate code or translate something from one language to another, people would think it's a very straightforward process, but ladies and gentlemen, no, it's not. And you can almost say that in the equivalent to like, even in actual, foreign languages. So, for example, converting English to Chinese and vice versa, you would think it's a straightforward process, but they work, but the languages are completely different. And even if you gave Google Translator to try and translate something in Chinese from English, it wouldn't do a great job out of it. And any Chinese viewers can probably back me on this. And that's kind of the same experience that I faced when I was doing this particular project, when I was reading the book. Despite writing the C# code equivalent to what I saw in the book, I was experiencing issues, which I shouldn't have. And there were just little things I experienced in the C# language where I was scratching my head and I'm thinking, how does this work? But I've so far read so many pages, and I have learned things that I haven't learned before, which is really great. But there are 200 pages in the book, and I'm at a standstill, and I'm actually at a blocker. And half an hour ago, I was frustrated, and I was annoyed at the fact that I was like, oh my goodness, I fix a problem, I then keep moving forward, and I find another problem. And that is why, despite it being a 200-page book, I've been working on this project for months. I think when I say months, it's currently May, and I believe I started probably in February. And my idea was to finish the project, hoping to put down my resume, hoping to make a video say, hey, ladies and gentlemen, I've done this cool project. I've read this book and I've done this project. Look at me. It would have been a great accomplishment. But I'm now at that point where I'm like, oh, it's in terms of how the project's been going, it's like a bunch of ups and downs. And when I think about whether I want to continue going on this project, like part of my motivation was to, have I been enjoying the project? Sure, in the sense of I've been learning things, but in terms of whether I'm actually, is it my passion project? No, I wouldn't say so. It's more for my career as opposed to more just building something that I want to build, if you see what I mean. I'm just doing it more for my career. And actually, part of the motivation for why I did that was due to a Twitch streamer, or a popular Twitch streamer called The Primogen. He's very well known in the tech field, and he was the one who recommended a book on this. He's the one who introduced me to this book, and I thought I might as well try and expand my horizons. And that's why, despite doing, not finishing the project, I'm still proud of it. And based on what I just said right there, I'm not ashamed to admit that and to actually walk away and actually leave the project unfinished. My mentality all this time, especially in the tech sector, when it comes to my personal projects, I have this, I think for all the projects I've done, most of them I've worked on for a couple of days, weeks, even months, and I finished it. And I always had this mentality of like, oh, once I start a project and once I go into it, and I'm at the weeks when I've done multiple days working on it, I tell myself I have to get it done. This is one of those times where I'm like, okay, we're now talking months now, and now it's to the point where I'm like, is this really worth going through all the back and forth, frustrations of like fixing issue after issue after issue, which I personally think I'm more than happy to leave the project unfinished. And this might be one of those first times, but it then kind of dawned upon me, and I realized that I believe it's okay to leave projects unfinished. In fact, having unfinished projects is 100% way better than having no projects whatsoever in your portfolio. At least when it comes to an unfinished project, I'm sure you might have taken one to many things from that project that you can use moving forward. And I wasn't sure if it was the Primogen or someone else. Just because you start a project doesn't mean you have to finish it, complete it. You can basically do a mini project, leave it unfinished, but just with the intention of like trying to delve into something, try to experiment with something, and you can leave it. And that's why I'm kind of saying it's okay to leave things unfinished. Don't feel down and don't feel bad about not finishing it. Because my attitude before making this video was like, oh, I feel like a loser for quitting. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, all this time I wasted on this. If I don't finish it, I'm gonna be a failure. I'm gonna be an idiot. All of these things, like all of these negative thoughts. But in the end, I don't mind having that project unfinished. I don't mind having that on my GitHub. I'm not ashamed to admit that, because at least I worked on it. At least I worked on something, took away things from it, and that's better than nothing every single time. Whether I do walk away from the project, whether I decide to pick it up again in the future or whether I just leave it, that's completely up to me, and that's cool. I would imagine even business people, even staffs, man, come on, 9 out of 10 staffs fail. If a star company fails, it's unfinished. You work on the next one, or whatever, man. But that's kind of where I'm at with this, and this is coming from a person. And again, my background's always been finishing what I started, and sometimes that can work to an extent. In certain situations, fair enough. You got to finish what you started, fair enough. But if it's to the point where, if it's in the context of projects, personal projects, things that I'm doing, you're doing in your free time, these are things that that's your choice, and you're thinking it's just not really going anywhere, or it's just not really hitting it for me. It's not really giving me that satisfaction, because at the end of the day, it's just, again, all these personal projects, what I'm doing is just more just for learning. And what I do in my free time is kind of just do whatever you want to do in your free in your free time. Because at the end of the day, we all have one life to live. Is it really worth spending my free time scratching my head, getting frustrated around like, oh, why's this bug not working? Especially over a project that I'm only doing purely just for my personal development, as opposed to doing for just because it's fun. And of all the projects that I've done so far, I think this project has definitely been one of the ones where when I have to work on the project, there's a lot of mental gymnastics I have to go through in my mind because there's no alignment between, the project and, it doesn't really align with my passion. It's not really something I'm into as much. The only passion I've actually gotten from it was actually, learning little things and just seeing, implementing the codes, running the tests and seeing it pass. That gives me a buzz. Fixing those issues is great. It's actually a really nice feeling. But then what I realized is every time I kept fixing something, it creates more problems. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah, this is, especially if it's in my free time, I'm like, yeah, I like to look, when it comes to like the boring, well, when I say boring, when I say the mundane stuff, I probably wouldn't mind just devoting that to maybe like reading, reading books, reading technical books, or at least in the context of my career. I wouldn't mind doing it on really technical books, maybe watching some YouTube videos, but when it comes to like, I don't know, when it comes to coding and everything, because I do love coding, I would prefer to do projects that I'm more passionate about. Now, people may have differing opinions on that, like in terms of what you want to do in your project, but I'm like, would we not prefer having a project that we're truly passionate about, and where we can actually more likely, you can work on consistently, you can keep on working on it, and actually having an output, as opposed to working on an actual project, on a project that you're not passionate about, but it is actually good in terms of like what you may learn from it, and it may enhance your skills a lot quicker. But yet, the challenge is like getting yourself to be more disciplined and just tough it out and get through it. I'll probably go for the first option because, number one, I'll be more happy because, again, at the end of the day, I'm not so like in the tech field, like I do these things because I enjoy it, not necessarily to do with worrying about like trying to stay relevant in the job market, because at the end of the day, I'm going to be blunt about this. I'm sure there are plenty of people who are probably working on their own personal projects or side projects in their free time, and they're probably putting a ton of hours, working on stuff that's like insane, and in complexity and all those things. There are plenty of people who are like above me. I can't control that. I'd rather just do me. But I also know, but there are also other people who are actually enjoying themselves, and they're not doing anything in terms of in their personal time that's linked to their career development, and not even working on personal projects. In the tech sector, I know people who don't actually do that. They actually do other things like traveling, even things like judo, just like playing music, all these things, right? But yet they're happy people. And ladies and gentlemen, I think it's just having a balance between those two things. I'd rather be in the middle of that, enjoying the beauties of life, and at the same time, like, progressing myself in my career through personal projects that it does have some alignment. And I think there's I think it's a barrier in terms of like, solving a problem that I'm actually passionate about and improving myself in terms of my skills. I think if we can get the intersection between the two, that for me is what makes these hours that I may spend into this not only enjoyable, but also beneficial for my career. That's where it comes down to, just having that fine line. This project hasn't been that for me. It's been a mental barrier. And here's the key, right? When I was done, kind of like I logged off and kind of felt defeated of not being able to solve the problem in that project, the first thing in my mind was like, should I just quit doing personal projects and just take a break in in its entirety? And while I may think that's a good idea, to myself, for me anyway, I would have said no. Because just because I experienced a setback in one of my projects doesn't stop me from working on something else and keeping the momentum going and keep producing and keep into the habit of like improving myself, at least putting myself in the, keeping, I guess, not sharpening my coding skill blades. I don't know what that means, but basically keeping up the momentum. I really do believe that. Again, there are people who so when it comes to personal projects in the tech sector, there are plenty of people who I know who are not doing it at all. Some people who I'm fairly sure are just, they are sufficed with just reading stuff, watching videos, and yet they still have a happy life. And I think kudos to those people, because I might consider doing something similar as well. Personal projects is meant to be about solving a problem and just demonstrating that you have the ability to solve a problem using certain tools, technologies. And yeah, I kind of lost train of thought for a second because I'm like, yeah, going on a absolute teardown. But yeah, that's how I really feel about all of this thing. So yeah, I guess in conclusion to this, yes, it's okay to leave projects unfinished. I think it's a problem when you have a mental barrier. There's a barrier and you're blocked on a project, and you stop entirely because of one project. Just because of one, you walk away from the project and you're done. Your output is basically zero. No, I don't think that's the right decision at all. I think if you can work on something else that's going to keep the momentum going, and it's aligning with, you're still growing and it still aligns with your passion and you're working on that consistently, the growth that you would experience through that versus the growth that you get from doing absolutely nothing, just walking away, that's the key. And again, I can't remember the statistics of consistently working over, a long period, doesn't matter, even if it's as simple as 5 minutes. I didn't realize 5 minutes for a year daily equates to 30 hours, and that's better than nothing. That's why I'm saying, don't just quit because of one unfinished project or whatever it is, one big barrier. Work on something else, keep the momentum going. If you fail on something, it's not the end of the world. I will say don't take a break and don't walk away. Go back to the drawing board and do something else. So for me, this project, I'm kind of at that barrier where I'm basically banging my head against the wall. And I'm rather than quitting, I'm thinking, you know what, I'm done with projects, done all this. I'm okay, cool. It's been a great experience. I learned things from this. I think it's time for me to just put this project to the side. Whether I decide to work on it in the near future, it's completely up to me. It's there if I wanted to do that. I'm now going to work on projects that I want to work on, and that's actually, again, these are projects that are not, because again, the whole idea of this project was actually based on a book. So basically I was doing like for like. So it wasn't actually a project that's my idea. It was the project was already in the book I was reading. So I was just following that, but writing it in a different language. But the projects that I have in my mind and the ones I've done in the past, I've actually done, and I create all those projects because of the problems I may have faced, or because of just ideas I came in my mind. And there's nothing more enjoyable than working on a project and solving a problem that I'm actually interested in. Trust me on that. It does you wonders. But yeah, it is okay to leave a project unfinished. Put the ego aside, be prepared to walk away, and just remember, making consistent results daily, regardless of what project it is way, way better than zero. Having unfinished projects is 100% better than zero projects. Don't give up after an unfinished project. If you have an unfinished project, be proud of it. If you took something away from it, that's excellent. You know? But just because it's unfinished, and just because it's a project and you have just because you started the project doesn't mean you have to finish it through to completion. I could probably say, even in the software world, even in the career, there are many projects that we may have worked on for months and years, and it may not even ever get released. It may get scrapped. That's just life. And the sooner we realize that, and the sooner I realize that, or probably you realize that, I don't know who I'm talking to right now, future me, the better. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is, I was about to say my real name. But yeah, it's been your boy, and I'm out. Peace.